The war in the Middle East and a grim milestone.
The people of Gaza are now grieving 40,000 Palestinian lives lost, according to Gaza's health ministry. Most of the dead are women and children. This unimaginable situation is overwhelmingly due to recurring failures by the Israeli Defense Forces to comply with the rules of war.
40,000 lives lost in the Israel-Hamas war, now in its 11th month. The announcement came as international mediators held a new round of talks in Qatar. It is a high-stakes push to end the war in Gaza and secure the release of more hostages, adding to the tension a possible retaliatory strike by Iran.
We have to assume, and the information that we have tells us, that Iran has not moved off its threat to launch some kind of an attack on Israel, perhaps even using their proxies as well, like Hezbollah or the Houthis. So our assumption is that their thinking is still in that vein, that they're going to do something, and it could happen, in coming days. It could come nearly at any time now.
Okay, for more, let's bring in Stephen Cook. He is an expert on U.S. Middle East policy at the Council of Foreign Relations. Stephen, good to be with you today. Let's start with Iran and what Kirby just said. You have to assume Iran isn't backing down from its threat of retaliation. That said, it has been 2 weeks. What's your assessment of the situation?
Well, clearly the Iranians have been stayed by the very significant show of force on the part of the United States. The United States has more combat aircraft in the Middle East now than the entire Israeli Air Force. All that being said, the Iranians have vowed revenge, and something ugly is likely to come at a time of their own choosing. There's simply no way that the Iranians are going to let the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, which they have pinned on the Israelis, to go by unanswered. And so there are a number of options for the Iranians to retaliate. And I expect that they will avail themselves to one of those, and it will be punishing.
Stephen, what do you think the potential is right now for an all-out regional war over there?
Well, we are observing a regional war. The question is whether there's an intensification of it. And I think that clearly the nature of the Iranian response will tell us the direction of it. There is a very significant risk of escalation between the Israelis and the Iranians. If the Iranians do a lot of damage to Israel, Israel will have to respond. And there you go, up the escalation ladder. If we're asking whether the Saudis, the Emiratis, and others will get involved in this conflict, I think it's unlikely. I think this is something that is between Israel and Iran, and by extension, Israel's axis of resistance and the United States. But it will be, what we're looking at is the potential for an intensification of something that has already engulfed parts of the region.
Yeah, I want to turn now back to Ismail Haniyeh. He was widely considered the primary leader of Hamas since 2017 and was the chief negotiator for Hamas for the Qatari-brokered ceasefire deal with Israel. How do you think the current talks will be productive if Hamas is not present?
Yeah, Ismail Haniyeh was the leader of the political office of Hamas, and therefore he was responsible for these negotiations. But the real power center is in Gaza with Yahya Sinwar. And Sinwar has been skeptical of ceasefire negotiations for many months now, believing that Hamas is actually winning this conflict and that there is really no need for a ceasefire. So the fact that he is not enthusiastic about it, and that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel is dependent upon parties that are opposed to a ceasefire and want to prioritize the destruction of Hamas, would suggest that despite a reconvening of these talks, they're unlikely to yield results.
Yeah, and I know that you posted on X recently that neither Israel or Hamas really want a ceasefire deal. Talk to us more about that.
Well, as I said, Yahya Sinwar believes he's winning the conflict. He's engaged in a total war, and the delegitimization of Israel and delegitimization in the eyes of the international community is significant. And that's part of the total war that they are fighting. And the hardliners in the Israeli government don't want a ceasefire either, because that would interfere with their ultimate goal, which is the resettlement of the Gaza Strip. So it's very hard to imagine that Netanyahu can bring those parties along to a ceasefire, and Sinwar doesn't seem interested in it. Although it's important to recognize that Hamas, although not at the table, is in Doha and has indicated that it is willing to hear out what negotiators have come up with, and that Netanyahu, ahead of these talks, broadened, however slightly, the mandate of his negotiators to move on a ceasefire. But still, there doesn't seem to be a real basis for agreement here.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Stephen, thank you so much for weighing in. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.